One day, King Robert felt that the time to choose an heir had come. He had 3 sons, Edward, James, and his youngest son, Alex. The king came up with a test for them, which was a bit strange. It was necessary to find the king the most loyal friend, a smart, brave, small dog, and whoever found the smallest dog would be king after his father. The princes were surprised, but they honored their father too much to refuse this challenge. They each received a bag of gold from their father and said, "I will meet you in a year." The brothers swore to each other to remain friends no matter who won, and went their separate ways. Each went his own way, and each of them had many adventures. But I will only tell you about the youngest prince, Alex. He was smart, handsome, and always had good luck in life. Everything he did well, and he was braver than a pack of lions. Then one evening, as young Prince Alex was making his way through the thickets in the forest, a storm came. Everything around him was covered with darkness, and the prince got lost. Suddenly he saw a light in the distance, and reaching it, he reached the magic castle. Its doors and windows were decorated with precious stones, and its walls were of crystal. Hanging were pictures from magical fairy tales of Cinderella, Tom Thumb, Sleeping Beauty, and others, painted in gold and silver. A huge diamond served as the doorknob. The prince knocked on the door and it opened. As he stepped inside, he saw several pairs of hands, holding under their noses and carrying treats. The people themselves were not visible, only the hands. The prince didn't know what to do, and stood there like a stumbling block as he contemplated whether he should run away from this place. One pair of hands picked him up under the elbow and led him deep into the castle. Then, bringing up the coral doors, pushed him inside. He walked through 60 rooms, each decorated with magical paintings. Candles and candelabras burned everywhere. Suddenly again, hands from somewhere pushed him into the middle of 61 rooms. Here was the burning fireplace beside him. Invisible hands quickly stripped him of his wet clothes and put on dry ones, even richer than his former ones. The younger prince was then escorted to the next room, where the walls were painted with various feline characters. Here were the cat in boots, the 3 little kittens who had lost their gloves, the cat who had gone to London to see the Queen, and many others. In the middle of the room stood a golden chair set for 2. A cat of extraordinary beauty, with luxurious white fur, entered. She was accompanied by feline servants, dressed in rich robes. "Hello, young prince," she said. "We are pleased to see you in the castle, your highest majesty," the prince replied. "I thank you for your hospitality," he said. "You are truly the most outstanding cat I have ever seen. Your words are so courteous, and your whole palace is beyond praise." The young prince said to the cat, "Don't flatter me. I love the simple words of simple people." "Would you like to dine with me?" asked the cat. The invisible hands immediately set the table and put food in the plates, a piece of mouse pie for the cat, and a piece of berry pie for the prince. The sight of the mouse pie frightened the prince. He felt uncomfortable and could not bring himself to eat even a piece of his food. As if guessing his thoughts, the cat said, "Don't worry, Prince. My cook is a very clean and neat man. He knows that cats eat mice, but humans don't. Eat your food in peace." The prince smiled and ate it all at once. After dinner, they went to another room. There the cats dressed in ballroom costumes began to entertain them with Spanish and Chinese dances. Afterward, the princes were led into the bedroom and put to bed. The walls in the bedroom were decorated with pictures of various flowers made from moth wings and bird feathers. The next day, early in the morning, the prince was awakened by the sound of a trumpet. the hands of an invisible servant gave him his hunting clothes, and he went downstairs, where waiting for him was a magic wooden horse, which ran and galloped as well as a real one. The princess cat herself was riding on a monkey for the hunt. After the hunt at dinner, the prince was served a magic drink, drinking which he immediately forgot who he was, and where he came from, and why he came here. He only wanted to be constantly in the company of the charming Princess Cat. They went hunting, fished, read and played the piano, listened to cat operas and watched cat ballets, and all the while they were served by the hands of an invisible, tireless servant. And then one day, the Princess Cat said to the prince, "In 3 days you must return to your father and bring him a little dog." "Oh my God!" cried out the prince. "How could I have forgotten that? But how will I have time to get a little dog, buy a horse, and get home all in 3 days?" Princess Cat smiled enigmatically. "Prince, you are my friend. I will help you. My magic wooden horse will get you home in 24 hours. "But what about the doggie?" mocked the prince. "Here she is," replied the princess, and she gave him a small grain. "Put it in your ear," she commanded. He did so, and the little seed in his ear suddenly barked softly. "Do not open the seed until you return to your father, she said. The prince returned home before his brothers, but soon they came too. King Robert appeared in front of his sons. The youngest prince, Alex, held out a grain to him. "This is for you, father," he said. The king opened the seed from its midsection. Covered in velvet, a tiny dog that was smaller than a pinhead hole jumped out. She mellifluously bowed and danced a Spanish dance for the king. The king was overjoyed, but decided to give his sons another test. Now he said, "Bring me each one a dress that will fit through the eye of a needle. I give you a term of 1 year." The princes went off in different directions, and the youngest prince, Alex, went straight to the cat's palace. The Princess Cat was very happy to see him, and after listening to his story said, "Don't worry, live in peace. I will arrange everything in the best way." So another year passed. One day the princess woke up the prince early in the morning and said, "Tomorrow you must go back to your father and bring him a dress. The carriage and horses are ready. Go on your way. Here's a walnut for your father. When he opens it, he'll find what he wants." "My dear princess," said the prince, "I'm so happy with you that I don't want to go back to my father. I don't want a royal throne. I want to be near you." The cat smiled and said, "You must go back. There is waiting for you." The prince returned home. The brothers were already in the palace. The dresses brought were by far the finest and most beautiful, but when the father king tried to pull the clothes through the eye of the needle, he failed. That's when young Prince Alex stepped forward. He gave the king a walnut. Everyone smiled and thought, "This is just a joke." The king opened the walnut, and inside was a bean kernel. He opened the grain and found a grain of wheat. The prince was worried, but when the king opened this grain and took out a lovely royal dress, everyone was stunned. It was so shimmering and sparkling with all the colors of the rainbow. It had on it the most marvelous animals, birds, fish, everything in the world, and it passed freely through the eye of the needle. "I am very glad," said King Robert. "Now I give you one last task. Bring me the most beautiful girl to be your bride. We will meet again in a year." The princes set off, and Prince Alex went straight to the cat palace. "I already know everything," said the Princess Cat. "I'll help you." The 3rd year went by even faster than the first 2. Prince Alex and Princess Cat hunted, played chess, and read aloud magical fairy tales. Finally, the day of homecoming came. Now all your happiness is in your hands. "Thanks," said the cat. "I am an enchanted princess, and only you can cast a spell on me." "But how?" cried out the prince. "Cut off my head and tail and burn them in the fire," said the cat. "There is no way I can cut off your head," said the prince. "You are more precious to me than 100 crowns and thrones. Not a single hair will fall from your head. You must do it." "I insist," said the cat. "It will only make things better for you and me." The prince's heart filled with anxiety, but he agreed. Though his hands trembled, he did what the cat told him to do, and then a miracle happened. Before him stood a girl of such unearthly beauty that anyone who had ever seen her would have fallen in love with her without memory, forgetting everything in the world. Immediately, all the cat servants turned into humans, and the princess told the prince her story. "I was not always a cat," she said. "My father ruled over 6 kingdoms, and my mother loved to travel. One day she heard a story about a strange fruit growing in an old abandoned castle, and she went there at once. But the gates of the castle were locked from the inside, and the walls were so high and impregnable that there was no way to get in. The queen fell ill, realizing that she would not be able to taste the wondrous fruit. Then one day, an old woman appeared before her. "Queen," said the old woman, "I know that you are so eager to taste the strange fruit that you would die without it. I will bring it to you. But in return you must give me your daughter, whom you will soon give birth to." The queen, mad with curiosity, agreed. "I will endow your daughter with kindness, wisdom, beauty, nobility," she said. "But you must not see her until she is 20 years old." "Are you taking a stern promise from me?" Father asked. "Yes, I agree," said the queen. The maid dressed her and led her to a garden where there was a strange tree with fruit. The queen tasted the fruit, and the old woman picked a whole basket and went away with her. Soon afterward, I was born. My mother was afraid of her promise. She could not tell my father about it, and soon fell into a deep languor. My father was very troubled, and by long questioning got the truth from her. He was furious, and ordered his wife to be locked up and his daughter to be guarded. The fairies were angry with the king and inflicted on his kingdom all the worst diseases in the world. Terrified, the king turned to his friend, a wizard, and asked for help. "There's nothing I can do," said the wizard. "You have to keep your word." My father relented. He let my mother out of prison. She put me in a golden cradle and took me to the fairies. They gladly took me in and carried me to a fortress they had built especially for me. It had many lovely rooms and a roof in the form of a flowering garden. There was no door in the fortress, only very high windows. A few years passed and the fairies decided that it was time for me to get married. They chose King Tinny to be my husband. On the eve of the wedding, my parrot friend flew to me and said, "My poor little princess, I feel sorry for you." "Why?" I asked. "Because your future husband, King Tinny, is scary. He lives in the same tree as me." Before I could say it, one of the fairies came in and said, "Hurry up and get ready and come downstairs. King Tinny is there. Be nice to him." "But I don't want to see him and marry him," I cried. "Foolish child," said the fairy. "I know better who you should marry. Only dare to disobey me." I went downstairs in tears and saw him. He was no bigger than a parrot. He had the clawed feet of an eagle, a hump, and the ugly face of an evil dwarf. His nose was sharp, as long as a pencil. He wanted to hug me, but I ran away in terror and locked myself in my room. Then the cruel fairies cast a spell on me and my servants, turning us all into cats and felines. The sorcery was to end only when a young prince would appear in my palace who would love me. "I love you more than life," said the prince, "and I want to marry you." They went to the palace, and the princess hid inside the ruby egg. The prince's brothers were already in the palace, both with the most beautiful princesses. When it was the youngest's turn, he opened the ruby egg, and a princess came out, outshining day and night, sun and moon. She was dressed in a white and pink robe, and her head was adorned with a wreath of strange flowers. "Yes," shouted the joyful King Robert, "only she is worthy of my palace." "Your Majesty," answered the princess, "I thank you for your trust, but I don't need your throne. I have 6 of them." "Let me give 2 of them to your eldest sons," said King Robert, "and marry the youngest and live in the remaining 4 creatures." Everyone was happy, and immediately the priest married the 3 young couples, who lived happily all their lives.